This video on online testing should help you to get acclimated to the process of taking a math test online, and hopefully everything runs smoothly once we get this set up for online testing in the fall. Prior to this semester, for math classes at Raritan Valley, if you took an online math class, you would come into campus to take the test. You would take it in the testing center on those limited hours that the testing center had sometimes. Now you should be able to take it on a set number of days from anywhere using your computer, but of course there are certain parameters involved in this. The program we use is called a lockdown browser and a respondus monitor, which means that the lockdown browser, once you open it up and start the test, it prevents you from going anywhere else. So going to another website, downloading something, uploading something, and so forth. And then it also takes a recording of whatever's going on your screen so that I can take a look at it, so it'll record you taking the test as well as what's going on your screen. Then when you're done, you'll upload some work and I'll show you the process. Because this might be new to you, I ran a pilot of this over the summer with one of my classes and it seemed to run really well. I took some surveys and students really seemed to like that better than coming to the testing center on campus. So hopefully you feel the same, because we just started this process now for everybody. Because of that, I've set up a practice quiz to make sure that the software downloads correctly, that you're able to get in, and that everything works well. The first test is scheduled for the 29th and 30th of September. So you'll notice on the syllabus, the practice test is due on September 21st. So when you go into week 2, you'll see a practice test and a practice place to upload your work. Now, the practice quiz does have a math problem on it. I ask you to find the equation for a line between 2 points. So you might want to wait until you get through that first part of chapter 3 before you take the quiz. And then there's a couple of other things just to give yourself an idea about drop-down menus and so forth. You have 2 options for setting up the lockdown browser. One of them is, you notice in the course information module, the last thing says instructions to set up lockdown browser. And so it actually gives you a link. You can download and install the lockdown browser and so forth. On the other hand, I think you can also just click on the link for the practice quiz. When you click to the link on the practice quiz, it'll notice that you don't have the lockdown browser installed, and it'll install it for you. Okay. Once you open the quiz, I think it's like 4 or 5 questions. I think I give you like 30 minutes for it. So you go in there, you start the test. When you get done, you're going to need a piece of paper to write down some work, and then I want you to practice uploading it. So at the beginning, it'll go through a process of sort of checking you in. So it'll ask you to show your ID. You hold up your ID to the screen. It takes a good picture of it. And then it'll ask you to do a little bit of a room scan to make sure that there's not anything else going on in the room. So the first step is prepare for the quiz before you open up the test. So have some pencils ready, erasers, have your ID ready to go so that you're not running in and out. Make sure you're in a quiet area. It'll pick up noise from around you and flag it as, possible suspicions. Make sure the door is closed, that there's not people walking in and out, that you're not walking in and out. So the first step is to make sure that you're all ready to go. You've gotten rid of extra computers and iPads and phones and things like that. You've turned ringers off. You're ready to concentrate and take a test. And that's important too, that you have that ability to concentrate when you take the test, that you're not, people aren't running around. There is a time limit on the test. And so you don't want to be distracted while you're trying to take the test. All right, so you go through, you show your ID, you do the quick room scan, and then you start the test. Once you start the test, the countdown clock will run. You'll work on the test. When you get done, you'll upload your work. Because what happens is the lockdown browser prevents you from scanning things into your computer and then uploading them because it locks it down. So the way it works is when you get done with the test, you submit, you're done with the test, you exit the lockdown browser, then you go back in and upload your work. And that's why, if you notice, there's 2 separate assignments. One of them is to take the practice quiz and submit it. And then the second thing is simply a place to upload your work. So I want you to get some practice scanning something into either a Word document or a PDF. I don't want any JPEGs or HEIC files or anything. So it'll only take Word documents and PDF files. And on the test itself, you're going to have multiple pages. You want to make sure the pages are in order. They're all going the same direction and so forth, so that I can find your work and grade it. Right? So that's for the practice quiz. When you're ready for the test, I'm going to have pre-made test answer blanks so that you can organize your work, so that for the graphs, I'll be able to see accurate graphs. And so the first test is the 29th and 30th. You notice that it says test 1 work in graph paper, print this before the test. So about a week before, I'm going to remind you in the module from the previous week, print this pages, 3 pages somewhere. You could print them on campus if you happen to be on campus. You could send them to somebody and have them print them at work or their home or somewhere, but you need to use the papers that I'm giving you. I'm not going to grade the test if you're not using the papers, because otherwise I have no idea. For example, if you're not graphing the lines on graph paper, I have no idea if you're actually counting the slope accurately and so forth. Plus, it takes much longer to grade if the work is all over the place. So you notice what I have here is you can see these are certain problems I need you to show your work for. Those are the graphing problems. There's some that have intersection points or answers that I need in specific places so that I can follow things along and make sure that you get the credit for the work that you did correctly. Right? So print that out beforehand, have that ready to go. What does an online test look like? Well, I'm not going to show you the one that you're going to take. I'm going to show you one from another class. Right? So this is from a class over the summer. Their test 1 was the same thing, right? It required the lockdown browser and the webcam. And this program will not let you start the test without a webcam. So you need the webcam, you need the audio that goes with it. Otherwise, it's not going to let you take the test. So you open it up, there's instructions. And then these are the types of questions you might see. So you might see a question where you have to answer a yes or a no, or somewhere where you have to type in a function. Right? There might be a question where you show your work on that other sheet of paper, but then you type the numerical answer in here. Or there might be a question that just gives you a great big box. Well, in that case, you can show the work on another page, and in this box, you can just type something like see other page, or you can leave it blank. I will go through and I will look at the work, I will look at the answers. And so it's important to show your work, because oftentimes what I find is if somebody puts a wrong answer in, it's not necessarily because they didn't know how to do the problem, it's because they subtracted 18 minus 5 and got 3 instead of 13 or something like that. So if I can see that on your work that it was just a silly calculation mistake, I would give you most of the points for it. But if you don't show the work and all I have is a wrong answer, I have no idea what you did to get that wrong answer. So the process is important as well. For some of the more involved ones, don't spend all the time figuring out how to do all the math type stuff on a box like this. Just show the answer on another page, and that's why you'll notice on the work page sometimes there's places to write your answer after you've shown the work rather than put it here. If it's a short numerical answer, right, like this one says x equals this or x equals that, put the values in there, and then I can check this and I can check your work, and if they both match up, then it makes it real easy for me. You'll see too that there's places where there's multiple choice questions, right? So I think this test said, yeah, here's some tests with multiple choice. Some of them have drop downs, right? So you drop down the yes or no. Here's places where there's multiple choice. So just check at the end. I tend to put the multiple choice because I figure by the time you get near the end of the test, if you're running short on time, at least if you had to guess on a multiple choice, you're more likely to get it right than if you guess on an open-ended question. Right? When you get done, you should be able to go back and check your work, make sure everything's set. There's a time limit for the test, right? 2-hour time limit. So when you open up the test, it should tell you that, yes, I said you have 2 hours for the test. There's a scientific calculator on screen. When I tried this over the summer, people didn't tend to like that as much. They would rather use their own scientific calculator. So that's fine. Just make sure that it's actually a scientific calculator, that you're not bringing a phone into the test, because then I have no idea what you're typing on the phone. So let's be honest, use an actual scientific calculator. Right? Organize your work, make sure it's easier for me to see. And then at the end, right, it's going to count down. Be aware of time, because at the end of 2 hours, it's automatically going to submit whatever you have. Then what you're going to do is you're going to exit out of the lockdown browser completely, right? Close it, close Canvas. Once you submit it, exit lockdown browser. Then on a regular browser, log back into Canvas and go to that module where you had the test, and it says test 1, upload your work here. So the only thing that you can do on this is upload your work, right? You're submitting a file as a Word document or a PDF, and I'm going to ask you to do that within 15 minutes of completing your test. So on that practice test, figure out what you have to do to scan in those pages to make sure they're in order, that they're going the same direction, and that you submit it as either a Word doc or a PDF. No HEIC files or JPEG files. One file, one document that has all of your work in it as a Word or a PDF document, and hit submit. Now, What happens if you're taking the test and something goes wrong while you're taking the test? It's the same story I'm going to tell you about uploading your work. If you finish the test and then like 8 hours go by and then you upload your work, I have no idea what you did in those 8 hours, whether you reworked all the problems or you just were so excited that you finished your test that you said, woohoo, I'm done with the test. And you went out and you had lunch with friends and you went to work and you went to class and then you came back and went, oh yeah, I never uploaded my work. And then you uploaded it. Or were you playing games and trying to figure out how to redo all the problems? So the same thing if something goes wrong. If something goes wrong while you're taking the test, email me immediately and say, help, here's what happened. Don't wait like 8 hours and then send me a message because, again, I have no idea what happened in that time. And especially if the test is closed, then I really can't do much with it. So it may be that you email me at a time when I'm not on my computer, right? I'm teaching another class, I'm driving, this and that. But at least there's a timestamp that says I had an issue and here's what the issue was. And then I can go back. For example, I had somebody over the summer who didn't charge her computer before she took the test. And so she got a low battery indicator that popped up while she was taking the test. And she went to close the low battery thing and instead clicked too far and ended up closing the lockdown browser. And so the lockdown browser then just submitted the test and said, I guess she's done. Well, if you email me right away, I might be online. I might be able to look back at the video thing and go, oh, yeah, that's exactly what happened. Here, let me reopen the test and let you finish it or give you another attempt. If you wait until after the test is closed, then it becomes real hard to come up with a solution to something, even if it was something honest like, hey, I clicked the wrong button and this is what happened. That's when being able to see what happened on the screen is helpful for me because then I know, yeah, that's exactly what happened. She said she closed the low battery thing and it closed the lockdown browser. That's exactly what happened. I can go in and I can fix that. So if you come up with issues while you're taking the test, then please let me know right away, especially if the lockdown browser closes. If you try to close the system, it will close the lockdown browser and submit that test. So if you try to get out of the lockdown browser to look something up, it will do that. And the same thing if you bring like a second device to the test and you're looking stuff up, it's going to flag it for cheating. So we don't want to have to deal with those things. So that testing information summary should be a summary of everything I just told you. I'll replace the video with the new one, making sure your webcam's enabled, showing ID, on-screen calculator, making sure that you have everything you need before you start the test, and then scan your work after you exit the lockdown browser, label the problems, put them in order. I already have that by giving you that sheet of paper. And again, you're going to need to print that page out in advance. All right, so that should answer hopefully most of the questions about online testing. If you've never done online testing, the first time it's going to be a little bit different, right? You're going to be taking a test in front of a computer. It will ask you to make sure that that I can see your face. And so while you're taking the test, please, adjust your computer so that your face is visible, so that I'm not just seeing your forehead as you're taking this test. On the other hand, I do understand that you're going to be looking up and looking down, looking up and looking down. And so there actually is a thing inside of Respondus where it will alert you every time you move your head. And so I disabled that because I don't want it every 2 seconds when you're looking up and down to come yell at you. The flip side of that is you have to be honest and let us see your face while you're taking the test. All right. Hopefully that answers questions. If you have other questions besides this, please let me know. But the key is communication. If something goes wrong in the process or something doesn't work right, please let me know as soon as it happens so that we can correct it.